The billionaire stood frozen in Terminal 4, staring at a boarding pass worth $8 million in one hand and his phone in the other, his daughter's sleepy face filling the screen. Outside, snow blurred the runway lights into stars. Inside, his chest felt like it was caving in. A little girl in a red coat had just asked him if he was lost, and somehow that 5-year-old stranger had shattered every lie he'd been telling himself for 3 years. The question wasn't whether he'd get on that plane to Seattle. The question was whether he'd already lost everything that mattered while chasing everything that didn't. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stick around until the end, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about success. The thing about being a billionaire at 32 is that nobody tells you the truth anymore. Ethan Cole learned that lesson the hard way, somewhere between his second magazine cover and his third private jet. People smiled wider, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, agreed with opinions he'd pulled out of thin air just to see if anyone would push back. They never did. By the time he'd built Tech Vault Solutions into a $9 billion empire, Ethan had perfected the art of existing inside a bubble where every surface reflected back exactly what he wanted to see. Brilliant, visionary, unstoppable. The only problem? His 6-year-old daughter didn't give a damn about any of it. Ava Cole had her mother's eyes, dark brown, almost black, with that same way of looking straight through bullshit that used to make Ethan feel like the luckiest man alive. Before the cancer, before the hospital rooms and the morphine drip, and the morning he'd woken up to find his wife's side of the bed cold and empty in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. That was 3 years ago. 3 years of learning how to be a single father while running a company that never slept, never forgave mistakes, never cared that sometimes he had to leave parent-teacher conferences early because Tokyo was calling, or that he'd missed Ava's ballet recital because the acquisition in Frankfurt couldn't wait. The nanny said Ava was fine. The child psychologist he'd hired said she was adjusting well. His mother-in-law said he was doing his best. All of them were lying, and Ethan knew it. He just didn't know how to stop the machine he'd built. December 23rd, JFK Airport, Gate 42. Ethan sat in the first-class lounge with his laptop open, barely seeing the spreadsheet on the screen. His flight to Seattle boarded in 40 minutes. The meeting with Cascade Dynamics was scheduled for 8 a.m. Pacific Time, a deal that would expand TechVault's cloud infrastructure into the entire West Coast market. $8 million in immediate revenue. Projected growth into the hundreds of millions. His phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa, his executive assistant. Board wants confirmation you'll be back by the 26th. Shareholders meeting can't be moved. Ethan typed back. Confirmed. Back on the 25th. Another buzz. This one from Rosa, the nanny. Ava's asking when you're coming home. Told her after Christmas. She's upset. He stared at the message. His daughter was 6 years old. She didn't understand quarterly projections or market positioning. She understood that her father kept leaving and that her mother was never coming back and that Christmas was in 2 days. Ethan started typing a response, then deleted it. Started again. Deleted again. What was he supposed to say? Daddy has to make money so you can have everything you want? She didn't want things. She wanted him to read her bedtime stories in funny voices. She wanted him to make pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse, even though they always came out looking like drunk Picasso paintings. She wanted him to be there when she woke up from nightmares about the scary lady with no hair, her brain's way of processing her mother's final months. He closed the message without responding. Mr. Cole? A gate agent stood beside him, young guy with the kind of eager smile people get around money. Just wanted to let you know we'll be boarding our premier members in about 15 minutes. Can I get you anything while you wait? I'm fine. Of course, just let me know if... I said I'm fine. The smile faltered. The kid backed away. Ethan returned to his laptop, hating himself a little more. That was the thing people didn't tell you about grief. It didn't fade into some gentle melancholy. It metastasized into anger that leaked out at random targets. Gate agents, baristas, people who smiled too much, or talked too loud, or existed too obviously in a world that had taken the one person who'd made Ethan feel like a human being instead of a fucking stock ticker. He was halfway through an email when he heard it. Crying. Not the frustrated crying of a delayed passenger or the exhausted crying of a parent with a screaming infant. This was the lost crying of a child who just realized they were alone in a place too big to understand. Ethan glanced up. A little girl stood about 20 feet away near the departures board, red winter coat buttoned wrong, one shoe untied, tears streaming down her face as she turned in slow circles like a broken compass trying to find north. Other passengers flowed around her like water around a stone. Some glanced her way. Most didn't. New York City had perfected the art of not seeing things that weren't their problem. The girl's crying got louder. Ethan looked back at his laptop. Not his problem. The airport had security. Someone would help her. He had emails to answer, a flight to catch, a company that needed him more than some random lost kid needed a stranger who didn't know the first thing about helping anyone. The girl turned toward him, and their eyes met. She couldn't have been more than 5. Dark curls escaping from a knitted hat with a pom-pom on top, nose red from crying, absolutely terrified. And somehow looking straight at him like he was the only person in the entire terminal who could save her. "Fuck," Ethan muttered. He closed his laptop and walked over. The girl watched him approach with the kind of cautious hope kids get around adults they don't know, wanting help, but remembering all those warnings about strangers. Up close, she looked even smaller, maybe 4, not 5. The kind of small that made Ethan think of Ava at that age, before the world had taught her to be disappointed. He crouched down to her level, hands visible, voice soft. "Hey there, you okay?" Stupid question. Obviously, she wasn't okay. The girl shook her head, and more tears spilled down her cheeks. "I can't find my mommy." "Okay, that's okay. We'll find her." Ethan glanced around, looking for security or airport staff or literally any adult who was better qualified for this situation. Nobody. "What's your name?" "Lily." "That's a pretty name. I'm Ethan." He tried to remember what Rosa did when Ava got upset. Distraction, usually. "I like your coat. Red's a good color." Lily looked down at her coat like she'd forgotten she was wearing it. "My mommy got it for me, for Christmas. But it's not Christmas yet." "Where did you last see your mommy?" "At the bathroom. She told me to wait outside, but then there were so many people, and I got scared and I ran, but now I don't know where." She dissolved into fresh sobs. Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably Vanessa with another urgent update that couldn't wait. He ignored it. "Listen, Lily, I'm going to help you find your mom, okay? But I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that?" She nodded, wiping her nose on her sleeve. "Good. Do you know your mom's name, her full name?" "Claire. Claire Bennett." "Perfect. And do you know what flight you're supposed to be on?" Lily's face crumpled. "I don't know. Mommy has the tickets." Of course she did. Ethan stood up, pulling out his phone. He could call airport security, let them handle it through official channels. That was the smart move. The safe move. But official channels meant questions and forms, and possibly police involvement and a scared little girl waiting in some security office, while bureaucracy ground forward at its usual glacial pace. He thought about Ava. Thought about how she'd feel if she was lost in a place like this, surrounded by strangers, her father nowhere to be found because he was off chasing another deal in another city. "Okay," Ethan said. "We're going to find your mom, but you have to stay right next to me, okay? Hold my hand so you don't get lost again." Lily slipped her tiny hand into his without hesitation. Her palm was sweaty and warm. She trusted him completely, instantly, with the kind of blind faith only children could manage. It made Ethan's chest ache. They started walking back toward the main terminal, Lily's short legs struggling to keep up with his stride. He slowed down. When was the last time he'd matched his pace to someone else's needs instead of expecting them to keep up with him? "My mommy's really nice," Lily said, apparently recovered enough to talk. "She makes the best pancakes. Do you like pancakes?" "Yeah, I like pancakes." "Do you have a little girl?" The question hit harder than it should have. "I do. Her name's Ava. She's 6. "I'm 5. Almost 6, though. My birthday's in March." Lily swung their joined hands between them. "Is your little girl here?" "No, she's at home." "Don't you miss her?" Out of the mouths of children. "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. "I miss her a lot." "Then why aren't you with her?" "Because I have a meeting in Seattle that could change the trajectory of my company. Because shareholders don't care about bedtime stories. Because I've spent 3 years telling myself that building an empire for my daughter's future is the same as being present in her life right now. Because I'm a coward who's better at making money than facing the fact that I'm failing at the only job that actually matters. It's complicated, Ethan said. Lily thought about that. My daddy's in heaven. Mommy says he watches over us. Do you think he knows I'm lost? Jesus Christ. I think if your daddy's watching, he knows we're going to find your mom, and he knows you're being really brave. They reached the bathroom area where Lily thought she'd last seen her mother. No sign of her. Ethan checked his watch. 25 minutes until boarding. This was taking too long. He should hand Lily off to security and get back to his gate. Instead, he said, "Okay, let's think. Where else might your mom look for you? Maybe where we ate? We had chicken nuggets. Which restaurant?" Lily scrunched up her face. It had a big hamburger sign. That narrowed it down to about 6 places. "Okay, let's start checking." They walked through the terminal, Lily chattering about everything she saw. The Christmas decorations, the airplanes through the windows, a service dog wearing a vest. She had opinions about everything. The decorations were pretty, but not as good as the ones at the mall. Airplanes were scary, but also cool. She wished she could pet the dog. But Mommy said you can't pet working dogs. She reminded Ethan of Ava at that age, before the loss had made her quiet. "Mr. Ethan? Yeah? Are you sad?" He looked down at her. "Why do you ask that?" "Because you look how my mommy looks sometimes, when she thinks I'm not watching, like you're thinking about something that makes you hurt inside." 5 years old, and she read people better than most adults. Sometimes grown-ups have things that make them sad, but that's okay. It's okay to be sad sometimes. Mommy says it's okay to cry. She says Daddy would want us to keep living even though he's gone. Lily swung their hands again. "Do you cry?" When was the last time Ethan had cried? Not at the funeral. He'd been too numb. Not in the months after. He'd been too busy. Somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten how. "Not really," he admitted. "You should. It helps." "That's what Mommy says." They passed another restaurant. Not the right one. Ethan's phone buzzed again. Vanessa, probably wondering why he wasn't answering. 15 minutes until boarding. "There!" Lily dropped his hand and ran toward a woman who'd just emerged from a gate area down the corridor. The woman, Claire Bennett, presumably, looked up and saw her daughter running toward her. The expression on her face went through about 5 emotions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, relief, terror, and something close to collapse. She dropped to her knees and caught Lily in her arms, holding her so tight Ethan could see her shaking from 20 feet away. "Oh God, baby, where were you? I was... Claire pulled back, checking Lily over like she might have lost pieces. "I told you to stay right outside the bathroom. Right outside. I was gone for 2 minutes, and when I came back you were..." Her voice broke. "Don't ever do that again. Never. Do you understand?" "I'm sorry, Mommy. I got scared. There were too many people." Claire pressed her forehead against Lily's. I know, baby. It's okay. You're okay." She looked up and saw Ethan standing there. Did you... "I found her by the departures board," Ethan said. "She was upset. I was helping her look for you." Claire stood up, keeping Lily clutched against her side. She was younger than Ethan had expected, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and eyes that looked like they'd forgotten how to sleep. Exhausted, running on fumes and willpower. "Thank you," she said, and her voice cracked around the words. "Thank you so much. When I came out and she was gone, She stopped, visibly pulling herself together. "I'm sorry. Thank you. I don't know how to thank you enough." "It's okay. I'm just glad we found you." "This man's really nice, Mommy," Lily announced. "His name is Ethan, and he has a little girl named Ava, and we're friends now." Claire managed a watery smile. "Is that right?" "Yeah, and he said I was brave." "You were brave." Claire looked at Ethan, really looked at him, and he saw the moment she registered the expensive watch, the tailored coat, the carry-on bag that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her expression shifted slightly, not quite closing off, but becoming more careful. "I really can't thank you enough. Most people would have just walked past her." Most people had walked past her. Ethan had almost been one of them. "It's fine," he said. "Really. I have a daughter. I helped. An awkward silence fell. This was the part where he should politely excuse himself and get back to his gate. His flight was boarding. He'd done his good deed. Time to return to reality. "What's that beeping?" Lily asked. Claire dug her phone out of her pocket and silenced it. "Just a reminder about our flight. We need to get to the gate." "Where are you headed?" Ethan asked, though he wasn't sure why. "Phoenix. We're visiting my mother. She's not—" Claire glanced down at Lily, clearly editing herself. "She's not well." "I'm sorry." "It's okay." "Well, not okay, but—" She hitched her carry-on higher on her shoulder. One of the wheels was broken, Ethan noticed. The bag kept tilting sideways. "We should go. Our gate's all the way over in Terminal 7. Thank you again, really. You probably saved my entire life tonight." She started to turn away, Lily still pressed against her side. "Bye, Mr. Ethan," Lily waved. "I hope you go see your little girl soon." They disappeared into the crowd. Ethan stood there for a moment, feeling strange, off balance, like he'd started climbing stairs and missed a step in the dark. His phone buzzed. Vanessa. "Final boarding call. Are you at the gate?" He wasn't. He was standing in the middle of a terminal watching a woman and her daughter disappear into a sea of strangers, and for some reason he couldn't quite articulate. He wanted to call them back, which was insane. He didn't know them. One brief interaction didn't create some cosmic connection. He had a flight to catch, a meeting that could change his company's trajectory, a responsibility to his employees and shareholders and everyone who depended on TechVault's success. Ethan turned and headed back toward his gate. He made it about 50 feet before he stopped. "I hope you go see your little girl soon." When was the last time someone had said something to him that wasn't about work? When was the last time anyone had looked at him and seen a father instead of a CEO? When was the last time he'd felt like something other than a machine designed to generate wealth? His phone rang. Vanessa, not texting anymore. He declined the call. Instead, he turned around and walked back the way he'd come, scanning the crowd for a woman with a broken suitcase wheel and a little girl in a red coat. He found them near a coffee shop, Claire trying to fix the wheel while Lily watched airplanes through the window. "Hey," Ethan said. Claire looked up, startled. "Oh, hi. Did Lily forget something?" "No, What was he doing?" "Your flight's in Terminal 7? "Yeah, why?" "That's a long walk with a broken suitcase. And it's late. And—" He was making this up as he went. "Look, I have lounge access. All terminals. There's one near Gate 67. It's on the way to Terminal 7. You could stop, get some real food, let Lily rest before your flight. My treat." Claire stared at him. We can't. I'm not trying to be weird. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "I've been traveling for work nonstop for 3 years. I've spent more time in airports than my own house, and I can count on one hand the number of actual human conversations I've had. Today, you're number one." That made Claire laugh just a little. "That's kind of depressing." "Yeah, it really is." Ethan picked up her broken suitcase. "Come on! The lounge has good Wi-Fi and chicken nuggets that are way better than the regular airport ones. Lily can pick which airplane she wants to fly on." "I want to fly on the biggest one," Lily said immediately. Claire looked at her daughter, then at Ethan, clearly trying to decide if this was incredibly kind or incredibly creepy. Ethan couldn't blame her. Rich stranger offering to help a single mother in an airport wasn't exactly a low-risk scenario. "I'll show you my business card," he offered. "You can Google me right now. Make sure I'm not a serial killer." "Are you a serial killer?" "Not currently." That got another small laugh. "Okay, but just until our flight boards. And only because Lily deserves better nuggets than what I can afford at the regular places." They walked together toward the lounge, Lily holding both their hands and swinging between them like a human pendulum. The lounge agent barely glanced at Claire and Lily. When you were with Ethan Cole, doors opened and questions disappeared. Inside, the space was almost empty. Most business travelers had already caught their evening flights. Soft lighting, comfortable chairs, a buffet that actually looked like food instead of a science experiment. Lily made a beeline for the windows. "Mommy, look! You can see everything!" Claire set down her bag and followed her daughter, both of them pressing their faces against the glass to watch a 747 taxi toward the runway. Ethan ordered food, chicken nuggets for Lily, a sandwich for Claire, coffee for himself that he didn't want but needed something to do with his hands. When he brought the tray over, Claire was helping Lily out of her coat. She looked embarrassed. "You really didn't have to do this," she said. "I know. We're fine. I can pay for food." "I know that too." Ethan set down the tray. "But you're traveling to see your sick mother 2 days before Christmas, and your daughter just had a really scary experience, and I'm guessing you've had a shit day. So let me buy you a sandwich. It's not going to bankrupt either of us." Claire's jaw tightened, and for a second Ethan thought he'd pushed too far. Then she sighed and sank into the chair. "Yeah," she said quietly. "It's been a shit day." Lily was already destroying the chicken nuggets, making airplane noises as she flew each one toward her mouth. Claire watched her with an expression Ethan recognized, the exhausted love of a parent barely holding it together. "How old?" he asked. "5. Be 6 in March. She's—" Claire smiled. "She's everything." "I know the feeling." "Lily said you have a daughter. Ava, 6 years old. She's—" Ethan stopped. When had he last actually talked about Ava? Not the elevator pitch version he gave at networking events. Really talked about her. "She's brilliant, scary smart, loves ballet and dinosaurs, which is a combination I didn't know existed. She does this thing where she narrates everything when she's concentrating. Building with Legos, full documentary about the construction process. Drawing, art gallery tour in her own head out loud." Claire laughed. "Lily does that too. She narrates her dreams. I'll hear her in the morning describing everything that happened." "Ava's quieter than she used to be, since her mother died." The words came out before Ethan could stop them. He never talked about this. Not with colleagues, not with friends. What friends? Not with the therapist he'd seen twice before deciding he didn't have time for feelings. "I'm sorry," Claire said, and she sounded like she meant it. 3 years ago, cancer. By the time they caught it, he shook his head. She was gone in 6 months. "That's... Jesus, I'm so sorry. It's fine." "It's not fine." No, it wasn't. "Your husband?" "Marines. IED in Afghanistan 4 years ago. Lily barely remembers him." Claire looked at her daughter, who was now arranging nuggets in a circle and humming to herself. "Sometimes I think that's worse. Like he's just a story I tell her instead of a person she knew." They sat in silence for a moment, two strangers bound by the specific loneliness of raising children alone. Around them, the lounge hummed with quiet conversations and the muted CNN feed playing on wall-mounted screens. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said. "Sure." "Why are you actually here? Helping us. You don't know me. You could have handed Lily off to security and gone on with your life." Ethan watched Lily building a fortress out of napkins. "Honestly, I don't know. I was sitting at my gate, getting ready to fly to Seattle for a meeting I don't want to take. And then I saw your daughter crying, and I thought about my daughter at home, and I couldn't walk away." "Where's Ava now?" "Home. With the nanny. She'll spend Christmas with my mother-in-law while I'm in Seattle, and then flying back for a shareholders meeting on the 26th. Claire was quiet for a long moment. "That sounds lonely." "It's fine." "You keep saying that. It's fine. But you look miserable." Ethan laughed, short and bitter. "That obvious? I'm a widow with a 5-year-old flying Spirit Airlines to Phoenix on my last credit card. I know what miserable looks like." "Fair point. I keep thinking I'm building something for her, for Ava's future. Big trust fund, best schools, every opportunity. But tonight your daughter asked why I wasn't with mine, and I didn't have a good answer." "Do you want to be there?" Did he? Or had he convinced himself that wanting didn't matter, that responsibility and duty and success were what defined a good father? "I don't know how to do both. Be present and build the company. Something always loses." "So which one is it?" Ethan looked at her. "What? Which one loses? The company or Ava?" He didn't answer. Couldn't answer, because they both knew. "My mom has pancreatic cancer," Claire said quietly. "Stage 4. She has maybe 3 months, maybe less. I'm flying to Phoenix on the last of my credit limit because if I don't go now..." She stopped, breathing carefully. "When John died, I thought that was the worst thing that could happen. And I built this whole life around protecting Lily from ever feeling that kind of loss again. But now I'm realizing I can't protect her from anything. Loss comes whether we're ready or not, whether we have money or not, whether we're good people or not. It just comes. That's bleak. Maybe. But it also means the only thing we actually control is whether we're there when it matters. Lily abandoned her napkin fort and climbed into Claire's lap, leaning against her mother's chest. Claire wrapped both arms around her, resting her chin on top of Lily's head. Ethan's phone buzzed. Vanessa again. You missed your flight. Cascade is furious. Call me. He stared at the screen. Missed the flight. $8 million deal, gone, because he'd stopped to help a lost child and then sat in a lounge talking to her mother instead of sprinting to his gate. He should be panicking, calling Vanessa back, doing damage control. Instead, he felt something that almost resembled relief. I think I just torpedoed my company's biggest deal of the year, he said. Claire's eyes widened. Because you were helping us? Because I wasn't paying attention to the time. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. You should have told us. No. Ethan set his phone down. It's not your fault. I chose to be here. And honestly, he looked at Lily, already half asleep against her mother. This is the first time in 3 years I've chosen anything that actually mattered. What are you going to do? Good question. The responsible thing would be to book another flight, chase the deal, salvage what he could. Apologize to Cascade, beg for another meeting, promise it would never happen again. But sitting in this lounge, watching a mother hold her daughter close, Ethan suddenly remembered a conversation from years ago. His wife, Sarah, 8 months pregnant with Ava, hands on her swollen belly. Promise me something, she'd said. When she's born, don't be like your father. Don't let work eat you alive. She'll need you more than she needs money. He'd promised. And then Sarah had died and the grief had swallowed him whole, and somewhere in the darkness, he'd forgotten that promise. Replaced it with a different kind of promise, that he'd make sure Ava never wanted for anything material. But she wanted him. She'd always wanted him, and he'd been too busy building an empire to notice. I think, Ethan said slowly, I'm going to go home. Claire smiled. Yeah? Yeah. He pulled up his phone and booked a flight. Red-eye to New York, landing at 6 a.m. He'd be home before Ava woke up. I'm going to go home and make my daughter pancakes. Probably terrible pancakes that look nothing like Mickey Mouse. And then I'm going to spend Christmas with her. Actually spend it with her, not take calls from my office or answer emails or disappear into my own head. That sounds perfect. It sounds terrifying. But also right. For the first time in forever, it felt right. An announcement crackled over the speakers. Final boarding for Flight 412 to Phoenix. That's us, Twice, Claire said. She shifted Lily in her arms, the girl stirring but not waking. We should go. They gathered their things, Claire's broken suitcase, Lily's stuffed elephant that had fallen under the chair. Ethan walked them to the tram that would take them to Terminal 7. Thank you, Claire said, for everything, for finding Lily, for the food, for... She gestured vaguely. I don't know, for being a person instead of just another face in the crowd. Thank you for reminding me what being a person looks like. Claire shifted Lily's weight and extended her hand. Ethan shook it. Her grip was firm, her palm rough from work he could only guess at. Good luck with your mom, he said. Good luck with your pancakes. She carried Lily onto the tram. Through the window, Lily's eyes fluttered open. She saw Ethan and waved, sleepy and small. He waved back. The tram pulled away. Ethan stood on the platform alone, the crowd flowing around him, departures and arrivals, and 1,000 lives intersecting for brief moments before scattering into the night. His phone buzzed. 27 missed calls, 43 emails. He silenced it and headed toward his own gate. Time to go home. The red-eye from JFK was half empty, which suited Ethan fine. He'd switched his first-class ticket for economy, a small gesture that felt strangely significant, sitting in a middle seat between a college kid with headphones and an elderly woman knitting something that might have been a scarf. Nobody recognized him. Nobody asked for anything. For 5 hours, he was just another tired passenger trying to sleep on a plane that smelled like recycled air and bad coffee. He didn't sleep. Instead, he stared out the window at the darkness and thought about what the hell he was going to say to his team, to the board, to Cascade Dynamics, who'd probably already started looking for alternative partners after he'd ghosted their $8 million meeting. His phone was still off. Somewhere over Pennsylvania, that felt like both a cowardly move and the bravest thing he'd done in years. The plane touched down at 6:17 in the morning. New York was gray and cold, the kind of December morning that made you question why anyone lived in the Northeast. Ethan grabbed his carry-on and joined the shuffle of passengers trudging through baggage claim like refugees from a war nobody won. Outside, he bypassed the town car that would have been waiting if he'd told anyone he was coming home early. Instead, he caught a regular cab, watching the meter tick upward while they crawled through morning traffic toward his brownstone in the West Village. The driver didn't try to make conversation. Ethan tipped him 40% anyway. His house looked different in the early morning light. Bigger. Emptier. He'd bought it 2 years ago for $7 million because Sarah had always wanted to live in the village, and even though she was gone, he'd convinced himself buying her dream house meant something, that it honored her memory. Really, it was just another expensive thing filling the space where actual meaning should have been. He let himself in quietly. The alarm was already disarmed. Rosa must have arrived early to start breakfast. He could hear movement from the kitchen, the soft clatter of dishes. Upstairs, Ava's door was closed. Ethan set down his bag and climbed the stairs, each step creaking in a way he'd never noticed before. How many times had he come home late, moving through this house like a ghost, too tired to do anything but collapse into bed? He pushed open Ava's door. She was asleep, curled on her side with her arms wrapped around the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2. One foot stuck out from under her princess-themed comforter. Her dark hair spread across the pillow in tangles that would take forever to brush out. She looked exactly like Sarah. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching his daughter sleep, and felt something crack open in his chest. When had she gotten so big? When had she stopped being the toddler who needed him to cut her food into tiny pieces? She'd be 7 in March, starting 2nd grade next year, growing up in a house where her father was more myth than man. Mr. Cole? He turned. Rosa stood at the top of the stairs, surprise clear on her face. She was 60, originally from Ecuador, and had worked for them since Ava was born. She'd stayed after Sarah died, holding the household together while Ethan fell apart in slow motion. "You're home," she said, keeping her voice low. "I thought you were in Seattle until the 26th. Change of plans." Rosa's eyes narrowed slightly. She had a way of looking at him that made Ethan feel like a child caught lying about homework. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, I wanted to be home for Christmas." "Does Ava know?" "Not yet. Let her sleep." Ethan closed Ava's door gently. "I'll make breakfast when she wakes up." "You want me to—" "No, I've got it." He paused. "Actually, Rosa, take the day off. The week, if you want. Paid. I'm going to be here." Rosa studied him for a long moment. "You sure about that?" "No, but I'm going to try." She nodded slowly. "Okay. But Mr. Cole, don't make promises to that little girl unless you plan to keep them. She's already lost one parent. She can't lose you too, even if you're still breathing." The words hit like a slap. Before Ethan could respond, Rosa gathered her coat and purse. "There's eggs in the fridge, pancake mix in the pantry. She likes chocolate chips in hers, but not too many, or she gets hyper." "I know." "Do you?" Rosa left. Ethan stood alone in the hallway, her question echoing in his head. Did he know? He knew Ava liked chocolate chips. He knew she hated broccoli, but would eat it if he pretended they were little trees. He knew she wanted a puppy and was scared of thunderstorms and loved the color purple. But knowing facts wasn't the same as knowing your kid. He headed downstairs to the kitchen, pulling out the pancake mix in a mixing bowl. The recipe on the box looked simple enough. Eggs, milk, oil, mix until smooth. Don't overmix. How hard could it be? 40 minutes later, Ethan stared at the smoking pan and the pancake that looked less like Mickey Mouse and more like something you'd find in a Rorschach test. The kitchen smelled like burning. Batter dripped down the front of the stove. He'd used too much oil, or not enough, or the wrong temperature. Who knew cooking was this complicated? "Daddy?" He spun around. Ava stood in the doorway in her pajamas, pink with unicorns, her rabbit dangling from one hand. Her hair stuck up in approximately 17 directions. She rubbed her eyes. looking confused and small and so much like her mother that Ethan forgot how to breathe. "Hey, sweetheart, you're home." She said it like she didn't quite believe it. "Rosa said you were in Seattle." "I was supposed to be, but I came home instead." Ethan gestured at the disaster zone behind him. "I was trying to make pancakes." Ava looked at the smoking pan, at the batter on the stove, at her father covered in flour he didn't remember spilling. "They look funny." "Yeah, cooking isn't my strong suit. Mommy used to make pancakes." Her voice got quiet. "I remember. She made them look like bears." "I know." Sarah had been good at everything domestic that Ethan failed at spectacularly. "I'm trying to make them look like Mickey Mouse, but they're not cooperating." Ava walked closer, standing on her tiptoes to see into the pan. "That doesn't look like Mickey Mouse." "I know. It looks like a blob with ears." "Yeah." "Can I have chocolate chips?" Relief flooded through him. "Absolutely." They made pancakes together, or rather Ava directed while Ethan fumbled through the actual cooking. She stood on a chair next to the stove, instructing him on exactly how many chocolate chips to add and where to put them so they'd make a face. "Not too many, Daddy. Rosa says too many makes me hyper." "Does it?" "Yes." She said it very seriously. "One time I ate a whole chocolate bar and I couldn't sleep, and I ran around in circles until I threw up." "Good to know." They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, Ava humming something that might have been a Christmas song or might have been completely made up. Ethan managed to produce something that approximately resembled a pancake, slightly burned on one side, undercooked in the middle, but recognizably pancake-shaped. "That one's better," Ava announced. "Thanks. Can we eat them now?" They sat at the kitchen table. Ethan never sat at the kitchen table, usually eating standing up or not at all, with a stack of imperfect pancakes between them. Ava drowned hers in syrup while narrating the process. "First, you need to make sure every single bite has syrup on it, because dry pancakes are yucky. Then you cut them into squares because squares are better than triangles. Triangles are too pointy and they poke your mouth." "Makes sense." "Do you eat pancakes in Seattle?" "Sometimes." "Are they better than these?" Ethan looked at the slightly burned, slightly raw pancakes they'd made together. "No, these are the best pancakes I've ever had." Ava beamed, then her smile faded slightly. "Are you leaving again?" "Not right now." "But later?" He wanted to promise he'd never leave again, that he'd be here every morning making terrible pancakes and every evening reading bedtime stories. But Rosa's words echoed in his head. "Don't make promises you can't keep." "I have to work sometimes," Ethan said carefully, "but I'm going to be here more. A lot more. And I'm not leaving before Christmas. I promise." "You promise? "I promise. Ava considered this while destroying another pancake. "When Mommy was sick, you said you'd be home more. But then you went away." The words hit like a freight train. Ethan set down his fork. "You remember that?" "I remember lots of things." Ava didn't look at him, focused on her plate. "I remember Mommy didn't have hair anymore. I remember she stayed in bed all the time. I remember you cried in your office, but you thought I didn't know." Christ, she'd been 3 years old. He'd thought, hoped, she was too young to remember. "Ava, it's okay, Daddy. Rosa says sometimes grown-ups need to work because that's how they feel better when they're sad." "Is that why you go away? Because you're still sad about Mommy?" How did you explain to a 6-year-old that her father had been using work as a drug to numb the pain? That building an empire had been easier than facing an empty bed and a daughter who looked exactly like the woman he'd lost? "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. "I think that's part of it, but that's not fair to you." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you lost your mom too. And instead of being here with you, I kept leaving. And that was wrong." Ava was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I don't remember Mommy's voice anymore. I try to remember, but I can't. Is that bad?" Ethan's throat closed up. "No, baby, that's not bad. That's just how memory works sometimes." "Do you remember? Did he?" Sarah's laugh, yes. The way she sang off key in the shower. The specific tone she used when she was annoyed but trying not to show it. But her everyday voice? The sound of her saying his name? "Some of it," he admitted. "We have videos. We can watch them together if you want." "Okay." Ava pushed syrup around her plate. "I'm glad you're home." "Me too." Can we decorate the Christmas tree today? Rosa said we had to wait for you, but you weren't coming until after Christmas. Ethan looked around the kitchen. He hadn't even noticed there was no Christmas tree. No decorations. Nothing. Because he'd been planning to be gone. Yeah, he said. We can definitely decorate a tree. We'll go pick one out together. A big one? The biggest one they have. Ava's face lit up. Really? Really? She launched herself out of her chair and wrapped her arms around his neck, squeezing tight. Ethan hugged her back, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, strawberry. When had Rosa switched to strawberry? And feeling the weight of her small body against his chest. 3 years. He'd wasted 3 years of this. His phone, which he'd finally turned back on, started buzzing on the counter. Vanessa's name flashed across the screen. Then Marcus Chen, his CFO. Then David Wright, the board chairman. Ava pulled back. You have to answer that? The old Ethan would have apologized and taken the call and disappeared into crisis management mode. But the old Ethan had missed 3 years of his daughter's life. Nope, Ethan said, declining the call. Today is about you and me and finding the biggest Christmas tree in New York. What if it doesn't fit in the house? Then we'll make it fit. They got dressed. Ava insisted on wearing her fancy red dress with the white trim because we're doing something special, and headed out into the cold December morning. The Christmas tree lot was 15 blocks away, and Ethan couldn't remember the last time he'd walked anywhere in the city. His life had become town cars and elevators and climate-controlled spaces where seasons didn't exist. Ava held his hand, skipping every few steps and pointing out decorations in store windows.
Look, Daddy, that's Santa's eyes move. I see it. And that one has real snow. How do they make snow inside? I have no idea. Can we get hot chocolate after we get the tree? Sure. With marshmallows? With as many marshmallows as you want. The tree lot was crowded with families doing the same thing, last-minute tree shopping 2 days before Christmas. Ava ran ahead, weaving between the rows of evergreens, debating the merits of each one out loud.
This one's too skinny. This one's too fat. This one's perfect. No, wait, this one's perfect. No, wait. Take your time, Ethan said. She finally settled on a 7-foot Douglas fir that was absolutely too big for their living room. Ethan bought it anyway, along with lights and ornaments, because he realized they'd thrown out all of Sarah's decorations after she died. Another thing he'd erased rather than dealing with. Getting the tree home was an adventure. The lot offered delivery, but Ava wanted to carry it themselves, so they dragged it through the village while she narrated their journey like they were on an Arctic expedition. We're almost there, team. Don't give up. The tree weighs 1,000 pounds, but we're strong. Other pedestrians gave them amused looks. Ethan didn't care. His daughter was laughing, actually laughing, and he couldn't remember the last time he'd heard that sound. They wrestled the tree through the front door. It definitely didn't fit. They had to trim branches and spent the next 2 hours decorating. Ava insisted every ornament needed a specific spot, and if it wasn't right, they had to move it. Daddy, that one's crooked. It looks fine to me. It's crooked. We have to fix it. They fixed it. His phone kept buzzing. He kept ignoring it. Around 3 in the afternoon, Ava crashed on the couch, exhausted from tree wrangling and chocolate chip pancakes and the general excitement of having her father actually present. Ethan covered her with a blanket and finally looked at his phone. 63 missed calls, over 100 emails, 3 voicemails from the board chairman that started professional and ended somewhere near apoplectic. The most recent email was from Marcus Chen, sent 20 minutes ago. We need to talk, now, Ethan called him. Marcus picked up on the first ring. Where the hell have you been? Home. With my daughter. You missed the Cascade meeting. Do you have any idea what you've done? They're talking to Harrison Tech now. We're out. $8 million down the drain, and that's not even counting the damage to our reputation. I know. You know? That's all you have to say? Ethan watched Ava sleep, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Marcus, how many hours a week do you work? What? What does that have to do with just answer the question? I don't know. 70, 80? You have kids? 2. Why? When's the last time you saw them awake? Silence on the other end. Then quieter. What's going on, Ethan? I'm tired, Marcus. I'm tired of building something that's supposed to matter while everything that actually matters falls apart. I missed 3 years of Ava's life. 3 years. And for what? So we could hit our quarterly projections? That's not fair. You built Tech Vault from nothing. You created jobs for 3,000 people. You revolutionized cloud infrastructure. And my daughter doesn't remember her mother's voice. Ethan's voice cracked. She's 6 years old and she's forgetting her mother because I was too busy being a visionary to actually be a father. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. So what are you saying? You're walking away? Was he? Ethan hadn't thought that far ahead. He'd gotten on a plane, come home, made pancakes. The future beyond that was still murky. I don't know, Ethan admitted, but I know I can't keep doing this. Something has to change. The board's calling for an emergency meeting. David wants your head. They're talking about a vote of no confidence. Let them vote. Ethan, I'm serious. Let them vote. If they want me out, I'll go. Maybe that's what needs to happen. You can't mean that, can't I? Ethan looked around his living room. $7 million worth of real estate that felt like a museum instead of a home. I spent 3 years trying to fill the hole Sarah left with money and success and deals that don't mean anything, and I'm still empty. But today I made pancakes with my daughter. Terrible pancakes. We bought a Christmas tree that doesn't fit, and for the first time since Sarah died, I don't feel like I'm drowning. Marcus sighed. The board meeting is tomorrow at 9. You need to be there. I'll be there. And you need to have a plan, not just feelings. A real plan for how you're going to fix this. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you just torched the biggest deal of the year because you had an existential crisis in an airport. Put that way, it sounded insane. Maybe it was insane. I'll figure it out, Ethan said. He hung up before Marcus could argue. Ava stirred on the couch, blinking awake slowly. Daddy? Right here. Is everything okay? You sound sad. I'm not sad, just thinking. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. About work? Yeah. Do you have to go back to Seattle? No, but I have a meeting tomorrow morning, just for a few hours. Ava's face fell. Oh. Hey. Ethan sat next to her. I'll be back before lunch, and then we'll do whatever you want for the rest of the day. Deal? Promise? Promise. She leaned against him, small and warm. Outside, the afternoon light was already fading. December in New York meant darkness came early, swallowing the city in shadows. Daddy, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think Mommy would be proud of you? The question gutted him. I don't know, sweetheart. Why? Because Rosa says Mommy's watching us from heaven, and I think she'd be happy you came home, even if the pancakes were bad. Ethan pulled her closer. The pancakes weren't that bad. Yes, they were. Okay, they were pretty bad. Ava giggled. They sat like that as the room grew darker, neither of them moving to turn on the lights. The Christmas tree blinked in the corner. They'd bought the multicolored lights because Ava insisted single-color lights were boring. Ethan's phone buzzed again. Another email. Another crisis that needed his immediate attention. He silenced it and held his daughter. Tomorrow he'd face the board. Tomorrow he'd figure out what came next. Tomorrow he'd deal with the mess he'd created by choosing, for once, to be human instead of efficient. But tonight, he was just a father sitting with his daughter in a room that finally felt like home. That night after dinner, delivered pizza because Ethan's cooking skills extended to pancakes and nothing else. Ava asked him to read her a bedtime story, not from one of her books. She wanted him to tell her about the day, about the little girl in the red coat. So Ethan sat on the edge of her bed and told her about Lily, about how she'd been lost and scared, about her mother, Claire, traveling to see her sick grandmother, about how sometimes strangers could remind you of what actually mattered. Did you ever see them again? Ava asked, already half asleep. No, they got on a plane to Phoenix. That's sad. Maybe. Or maybe they were exactly who I needed to meet at exactly the right time. Like angels? Like people, Ethan corrected gently. Just people being kind. Ava yawned. I'm glad you helped them. Me too. He kissed her forehead and turned off the light, leaving the door cracked open the way she liked it. In the hallway, he stood for a moment, listening to her breathing even out as sleep took over. Then he went downstairs to his office and started writing his resignation letter. He stared at the blank document for 20 minutes before typing the first sentence. Then he deleted it, started again, deleted again. How did you resign from a company you'd built from scratch? How did you walk away from something that had defined every waking moment for the last 8 years? The cursor blinked on the screen, waiting. Ethan closed the laptop. Maybe he didn't need to resign. Maybe there was a middle path, delegate more, travel less, restructure his role so he wasn't the bottleneck for every decision. Other CEOs managed it. They had families and still ran successful companies. It wasn't impossible. But those CEOs probably hadn't spent 3 years using work as a shield against grief. They probably hadn't built their entire identity around being indispensable. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then reconsidered. At this point, what was one more disaster? Hello? Mr. Cole? This is Janet Reeves from the Wall Street Journal. I was hoping to get a comment about the Cascade Dynamics situation. Of course, the press already knew. Tech gossip traveled faster than light. No comment, Ethan said. Sources say you missed a crucial meeting without explanation. Some are speculating about health issues or internal company conflict. Can you confirm? I said no comment. He hung up and blocked the number. 10 minutes later, his phone rang again. Different number. He let it go to voicemail. Then another call, another voicemail. By midnight, 6 different reporters had tried to reach him, each one digging for the story behind the billionaire who'd apparently lost his mind. Ethan poured himself a scotch he didn't want and stood in front of the living room window, looking out at the village. Brownstones lit up with Christmas lights. Couples walking home from late dinners. Normal people living normal lives that didn't involve shareholders and board meetings and reporters asking if you were having a breakdown. Was he having a breakdown? 2 days ago, he'd been in complete control. Focused, driven. Now he was home making pancakes and ignoring the company that 3,000 people depended on for their livelihoods. Maybe everyone was right to question him. He checked his email. The most recent one, sent an hour ago, was from David Wright, the board chairman. Subject line, emergency session, your attendance mandatory. Ethan opened it. The message was short and to the point. 9 a.m. tomorrow, conference room B. The board would be discussing recent events and leadership concerns. His presence was required. Translation? Show up and defend yourself or we'll vote you out without you. He should have been drafting talking points, preparing a defense, spinning the narrative. Instead, he finished his scotch and went upstairs to check on Ava one more time. She was sprawled diagonally across her bed, covers kicked off, rabbit clutched to her chest. He fixed her blanket and stood there watching her sleep, trying to memorize this moment, the curve of her cheek, the way her eyelashes cast shadows in the nightlight's glow, the small rise and fall of her breathing. If the board forced him out, would that be the worst thing? He'd still have his shares, still be wealthy beyond reason. He could actually be present in Ava's life instead of this half version of himself that existed in airports and conference calls. But Tech Vault was his legacy, his proof that he'd built something meaningful. Walking away felt like admitting failure, except he'd already failed at the only job that actually mattered. Ethan went to bed but didn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., he gave up and went back downstairs to his office. The resignation letter was still waiting, cursor blinking in the darkness. He started typing. This time the words came easier. Morning arrived too fast. Ethan showered and put on the armor. Tom Ford suit, Italian shoes, watch worth more than most cars. The uniform of success. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a stranger wearing his face. Downstairs, Ava was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table in her pajamas with a bowl of cereal. You're up early, Ethan said. Couldn't sleep. I'm too excited about today. Right. He'd promised her they'd spend the afternoon together after his meeting. What do you want to do? Ice skating at Rockefeller Center. Of course she wanted the most crowded, touristy thing possible. Okay, ice skating it is. Promise? Promise. You said that yesterday, too. And I kept it, didn't I? I was back for lunch. Ava considered this while crunching her cereal. Okay, but this time can we get hot chocolate after? The kind with whipped cream? Absolutely. She grinned. Ethan kissed the top of her head and grabbed his coat. Daddy? He turned back. Good luck at your meeting. Thanks, sweetheart. The town car was waiting outside. His driver, James, had been with him for 4 years and knew better than to make small talk. They drove through morning traffic in silence, Ethan watching the city slide past the window. TechVault's headquarters occupied 15 floors of a glass tower in Midtown. Ethan had chosen the location specifically because it screamed success, expensive rent, prestigious address, views that stretched to the harbor. Now it just felt like an expensive cage. He rode the elevator to the executive floor. His assistant's desk was empty. Vanessa was probably already in the conference room preparing damage control. The hallway felt longer than usual. His footsteps echoed on the marble floor. Conference room B was at the end of the hall. Through the glass walls, Ethan could see the board members already assembled. 12 people in expensive suits, all of them looking grim. He pushed open the door. Ethan. David Wright stood at the head of the table. 70 years old, former Goldman Sachs executive. The kind of man who'd probably been born wearing a tie. You're late. It's 8:58. The meeting started at 8:45. Of course it had. They'd moved the time and hadn't told him. Classic power move. Well, I'm here now, Ethan said, taking his seat. David didn't sit. He stood there, hands clasped behind his back like a disappointed headmaster. I think we all know why we're here. 3 days ago, you missed a critical meeting with Cascade Dynamics without notice or explanation. This represents a breach of fiduciary duty and raises serious questions about your fitness to lead this company. I had a personal emergency. What kind of emergency? The personal kind. That's not an answer. Ethan looked around the table. Faces he'd known for years. People he'd made rich beyond their wildest dreams when TechVault went public. Now they looked at him like he was a liability to be managed. My daughter needed me, he said quietly. David's expression didn't change. Your daughter has needed you for 3 years. Why was this time different? The question landed like a punch. Because it was the right question, the question Ethan had been avoiding asking himself. Because I finally noticed, he said. Silence fell over the room. Someone coughed. Papers shuffled. That's very touching, David said, not sounding touched at all. But this company has 3,000 employees who depend on your leadership. Shareholders who've invested billions based on your vision. You can't simply walk away from a major deal because you had an epiphany. I didn't walk away. I made a choice. The wrong choice. Maybe. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Or maybe the first right choice I've made in 3 years. Marcus Chen spoke up from the other end of the table. Ethan, nobody's questioning your dedication, but you have to understand how this looks. Our stock dropped 4% when news broke about the Cascade deal falling through. Competitors are circling. We need stability, not whatever this is. What is this exactly? That was Jennifer Park, the only board member who'd ever pushed back on Ethan's more aggressive strategies. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like a man finally admitting he can't do everything. He's the CEO, David snapped. Doing everything is literally his job. Is it? Jennifer looked at Ethan. When's the last time you took a vacation? I don't take vacations. When's the last time you went home before midnight? I don't know. When's the last time you did anything that wasn't directly related to this company? Ethan didn't answer. Jennifer turned to the rest of the board. We've built a culture where we expect our CEO to be superhuman, where we reward him for sacrificing everything at the altar of growth. And now we're shocked that he's burning out? That's on us. This isn't about burnout, David said. This is about abandoning responsibility. I didn't abandon anything, Ethan said. I made a decision. Maybe not the decision you wanted, but it was mine to make. And look where it got us. Cascade walked. We lost $8 million in immediate revenue and damaged relationships that took years to build, all because you decided to play Father of the Year for a day. The contempt in David's voice was clear. Ethan felt something shift inside him, a gear clicking into place. You're right, he said. David blinked. What? You're right. I made a choice that cost the company money and reputation, and I'd make it again. That's exactly the problem. Let me finish. Ethan stood up. I built this company from nothing. 4 of us in a basement in Brooklyn, eating ramen and coding 18 hours a day because we believed we could change how businesses handled data infrastructure. We did change it. TechVault is worth $9 billion. We employ 3,000 people across 6 countries. We revolutionized an industry. He paused, looking around the table. But somewhere along the way, I forgot why I was building it. I told myself it was for Ava's future, for her security, so she'd never have to worry about money. But the truth is, I built it because I was scared. Because my wife died and I didn't know how to process that, so I threw myself into work instead. I became the company, and the company became a way to avoid being human. This is very therapeutic, David said coldly. But it doesn't address— I'm not finished. Ethan pulled the folded letter from his jacket pocket. I wrote this last night. My resignation. I was going to read it to you this morning and walk away. Several board members sat up straighter. Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. But I realized something, Ethan continued. Quitting would be another way of running, another way of avoiding the hard work of actually fixing what's broken. So I'm not resigning. Then what are you doing? Jennifer asked. I'm restructuring my role, effective immediately. I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations. Marcus will take over as interim CEO while we search for a permanent replacement. I'll remain on the board and maintain strategic oversight, but I won't be involved in operational decisions. The room erupted. Multiple people talking at once, voices overlapping. You can't just— Without a proper transition, shareholders will panic. Ethan raised his hand. I can and I am. Check the bylaws. As founder and majority shareholder, I have the authority to restructure my own position. Marcus is more than capable of running operations. He's been doing most of it anyway, while I've been chasing deals around the world. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Ethan, I don't— You're ready? Ethan said. You've been ready for 2 years. I just didn't want to admit it, because then I'd have to face the fact that the company doesn't actually need me anymore. That's not true, Marcus said quietly. Isn't it? Be honest. How many decisions have you made in the last year that you ran past me just because protocol required it, even though you already knew what needed to be done? Marcus didn't answer, which was answer enough. David was red-faced, furious. This is unacceptable. You're walking away from your responsibilities. I'm reprioritizing them, Ethan corrected. My daughter is 6 years old. In 12 years, she'll be in college. In 20 years, she'll have her own life. I've already missed 3 years. I'm not missing any more. And the company will be fine. Better than fine. Marcus is brilliant. He understands the technology better than I do at this point. He has relationships with our major clients. The team respects him. This isn't a crisis. It's an opportunity. An opportunity for what? Jennifer asked. She wasn't hostile, just curious. For TechVault to prove it's built on something more than one person's ego. For me to prove I can be more than what I've been. For my daughter to have a father who's actually present. Ethan looked at David. You want to call a vote of no confidence? Go ahead. Vote me out entirely if you want. I'll survive. But if you're willing to give this a chance, I think we all will. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Outside the conference room windows, Manhattan spread out in steel and glass, millions of people living lives that had nothing to do with tech companies or board meetings or billionaires having existential crises. Finally, Jennifer spoke. I move that we accept Ethan's proposal. Interim CEO, transition to Marcus Chen, with Ethan maintaining his board seat and strategic advisory role. All in favor? Her hand went up. Slowly, 3 other hands joined hers, then 2 more. Marcus raised his hand, looking dazed. 7 votes. A majority. David Wright sat down heavily, his face unreadable. He didn't vote. Motion carries, Jennifer said. Marcus, congratulations. You're now the interim CEO of TechVault Solutions. Try not to let it kill you. Marcus laughed, a little hysterically. No promises. The meeting dissolved into logistics. Ethan answered questions on autopilot, transition timeline, communication strategy, client relationship transfers. Part of him was listening. Part of him was already gone, thinking about ice skating and hot chocolate and the promise he'd made to a 6-year-old who'd heard too many broken promises already. An hour later, he found himself in his office, former office, looking at 8 years of accumulated stuff. Photos from magazine shoots, awards he'd never bothered to display properly. A framed screenshot of TechVault's stock price the day they went public. None of it meant anything. He packed the few personal items that mattered. a photo of Sarah, one of Ava's drawings from kindergarten, the first dollar of revenue they'd ever earned, framed as a joke, and left the rest. Vanessa found him in the hallway. She looked exhausted, like she'd aged 5 years overnight. "So you actually did it," she said. "I actually did it. The press is going to eat this alive. You know that, right? Billionaire CEO steps down after missing major meeting. They're going to spin it every way possible." "Let them spin." Ethan handed her his office key. "Marcus is going to need an assistant he trusts. You should stay with him." "What about you?" "I'll figure it out." Vanessa studied him for a long moment. "You look different." "Different how?" "I don't know. Less like you're about to snap." She held out her hand. "Good luck, Mr. Cole." He shook it. "Ethan, just Ethan." The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. When the doors opened on the ground floor, Ethan walked through the lobby one last time. The security guard nodded. The receptionist smiled. Neither of them knew yet that the man passing by was no longer their CEO. Outside, the December air hit like a slap, cold and clean. Ethan stood on the sidewalk watching taxis stream past and realized he had no idea what to do next. For 8 years, every moment had been scheduled, every action purposeful and measured. Now he had an entire afternoon stretching ahead with nothing on the calendar except ice skating with his daughter. It felt terrifying. It felt like freedom. He pulled out his phone to call James for a ride home, then stopped. When was the last time he'd taken the subway? When was the last time he'd done anything like a normal person? Ethan walked to the nearest station and took the train downtown. The subway car was packed with lunch hour crowds. He stood crushed between a woman reading a romance novel and a teenager with headphones loud enough that everyone could hear the music. Nobody recognized him. Nobody cared. He was just another person in a suit, slightly overdressed for the subway, but not enough to draw attention. It was the most anonymous he'd felt in years. At home, Ava was waiting on the front steps with Rosa, both of them bundled in winter coats. "Daddy!" Ava jumped up and ran to him. "You're early." "Told you I'd be back." "How did the meeting go? How did you explain corporate restructuring to a 6-year-old? "It went fine. Everything's fine. Are you ready to go skating?" "I've been ready for hours. Rosa helped me find my gloves and everything." Rosa gave Ethan a long look. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, better than okay." He meant it. Rockefeller Center was exactly as crowded and chaotic as Ethan had feared. Tourists everywhere, multiple languages overlapping, the giant Christmas tree looming over the skating rink where dozens of people wobbled and fell and laughed. Ava's eyes went huge. "It's so pretty." They rented skates. Ethan couldn't remember the last time he'd been ice skating, maybe high school, and wobbled onto the ice. Ava immediately fell. Ethan helped her up. She fell again, laughed, got up again. "This is harder than it looks on TV," she announced. "Everything's harder than it looks on TV." They made slow, clumsy circuits around the rink, Ava holding his hand, narrating their progress like a sports announcer. "And Ava Cole is attempting a turn. Oh no, she's going down. But wait, she's back up. The crowd goes wild." Ethan was pretty sure he'd just publicly stepped down from a $9 billion company to spend the afternoon falling on ice with his daughter. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been this happy. They skated for an hour before Ava declared she was cold and wanted hot chocolate. They found a cafe nearby, crowded and warm, and squeezed into a corner table with 2 massive cups of cocoa topped with whipped cream and chocolate shavings. Ava got whipped cream on her nose. Ethan pointed it out. She crossed her eyes trying to see it, which made them both laugh. "This is the best day ever," she said. "Yeah?" "Yeah, can we do this all the time?" "Maybe not all the time, but more. A lot more." "Promise?" How many times had he made that promise? How many times had he broken it? "Promise," Ethan said, and this time he meant it. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Stock actually went up 2% after the announcement. Board issued a statement about planned leadership transition. Crisis averted. For now. Ethan turned off his phone and slipped it back in his pocket. "Everything okay?" Ava asked. "Everything's perfect." They finished their hot chocolate and walked home through the village as afternoon faded into evening. Christmas lights were coming on, store windows glowing. Ava sang a song she'd learned at school, something about reindeer and jingle bells, making up half the words she didn't remember. At home, Ethan made dinner. Well, he heated up the leftover pizza, and they ate in front of the TV watching a Christmas movie Ava had seen approximately 50 times, but still loved. During the commercial breaks, she leaned against him. "Daddy? Hmm? Are you going to leave again?" The question hurt every time. "I have to travel sometimes for work, but not like before, I promise." "What if you forget again?" "Then you remind me. Deal?" "Deal." After the movie, Ethan read her 3 bedtime stories. She'd negotiated up from 1 and tucked her in. "Tonight was really fun," Ava said sleepily. "Yeah, it really was." "I'm glad you're home." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." He kissed her forehead and turned off the light, leaving her door cracked open. In the hallway, he stood listening to her breathing even out as she drifted toward sleep. His phone had 17 new messages. The Wall Street Journal had run a story. Tech Vault founder steps back, what it means for the future of cloud computing. CNBC wanted an interview. So did Bloomberg. His mother had called 3 times. Ethan ignored all of it and went downstairs to the living room. The Christmas tree blinked in the corner, still slightly crooked, ornaments placed with the careful chaos only a 6-year-old could manage. He sat on the couch in the dark, watching the lights change colors, and thought about Claire and Lily. 2 strangers in an airport who'd somehow cracked open something Ethan had been keeping locked away for 3 years. He wondered if they'd made it to Phoenix, if Claire's mother was okay, if Lily was still chattering about everything and seeing the world with that innocent clarity only children possessed. He'd never know. They disappeared into their own lives, just like he'd disappeared into his, but they'd left something behind. A question that wouldn't let go. What actually mattered? Not the company, not the money, not the awards or the magazine covers or the reputation as a visionary. What mattered was upstairs sleeping with a stuffed rabbit, dreaming whatever 6-year-olds dreamed about. What mattered was the promise he'd made to Sarah before she died, that he wouldn't let work eat him alive. What mattered was being present in the small moments that added up to a life. Ethan's phone buzzed one more time. He almost ignored it, then saw the name. Jennifer Park. He answered. "Jennifer? I just wanted to say that took guts today. What you did. Or stupidity. Jury's still out." She laughed. "Maybe both. But I've been on this board for 6 years, and that's the most honest thing I've ever heard in that conference room. We needed it. You needed it. Thanks. My daughter's 14 now. I missed so much when she was little. Client dinners and business trips and all the things I told myself mattered. She barely talks to me anymore. I'm just the person who pays for things." Jennifer paused. "Don't make my mistakes, Ethan. You figured it out while there's still time." After they hung up, Ethan sat in the dark for a long time, watching the Christmas lights blink through their endless cycle of colors. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Questions from the press, adjustments to his new role, the strange reality of not being CEO anymore. But tonight, he was just a father in a house with his daughter. And for the first time in 3 years, that was enough. The first week was harder than Ethan expected. Not the work part. Marcus had operations running smoothly within 48 hours, proving what Ethan had suspected for months. The company didn't need him micromanaging every decision. It needed him to get out of the way. The hard part was the silence. For 8 years, Ethan's phone had been a constant stream of emergencies, decisions, problems that only he could solve. Now it barely rang. Marcus handled the operational fires. The executive team made their own calls. The world kept spinning without Ethan's hand on the wheel. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like falling. On Christmas Eve morning, Ethan woke up at 5:30 out of habit, reached for his phone to check emails, and found nothing urgent waiting. Just a text from his mother asking what time they'd arrive for dinner and a reminder that Ava's ballet class had its holiday showcase next week. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling useless. By 6, he gave up on sleep and went downstairs. The house was quiet. Rosa wouldn't arrive until 8. Ava was still asleep. Ethan made coffee and sat at the kitchen table watching the sky lighten over the village. What did people do with free time? He genuinely didn't know anymore. His laptop sat on the counter, closed. He could open it, check the company metrics, review the Q4 projections. Nobody would stop him, but that wasn't the deal he'd made with himself. Instead, Ethan pulled up a browser and searched things to do with kids in New York December. The results were overwhelming. Museums, shows, ice skating, already done that. Holiday markets, the tree lighting, missed that. Zoo lights. He was reading about the Natural History Museum when Ava appeared in the doorway, rabbit dragging on the floor behind her. "You're up early," she said, rubbing her eyes. "Couldn't sleep. You want pancakes?" "Can we have the good ones this time? From the diner?" Ethan laughed. "My pancakes weren't that bad." "Yes, they were, Daddy. They were really bad." "Fair enough. Go get dressed. We'll walk to the diner." 20 minutes later, they were bundled in coats and scarves, walking through the village in the early morning cold. The streets were quieter than usual, the pre-Christmas lull before everyone rushed out for last-minute shopping. The diner was warm and crowded, smelling like coffee and bacon. They squeezed into a booth by the window. Ava ordered chocolate chip pancakes. Ethan got eggs and toast he didn't really want. "What are we doing today?" Ava asked. "I don't know. What do you want to do?" She thought about it, swinging her legs under the table. "Can we go to the library? The big one with the lions?" "The public library?" "Yeah. My teacher says they have a Christmas tree made of books and I really want to see it." When was the last time Ethan had been to the library? He couldn't remember. "Sure, we can do that. And then can we make cookies for Santa?" "I thought you didn't believe in Santa anymore." Ava looked scandalized. "I never said that. Last year you told me Santa was just parents lying to kids." "That was last year. This year I believe again. Rosa says it's more fun to believe." The logic was flawless. "Okay, library, then cookies." They spent the morning at the New York Public Library, Ava running between the reading rooms with the kind of energy that made other parents give Ethan sympathetic looks. The book tree was exactly as advertised, 3 stories of books arranged in a spiral, topped with a star made of golden paperbacks. "It's beautiful," Ava breathed, staring up at it. "Yeah, it really is." They found the children's section, and Ava picked out 5 books, deliberating over each one like she was choosing which child to save from a burning building. Ethan got a library card, his first one since college, and checked them all out. On the walk home, Ava clutched the books to her chest and talked non-stop about which one they should read first, and whether the dragon in one of them was friendly or mean, and did Ethan think dragons were real, maybe a long time ago? "I don't know," Ethan said. "Maybe. I think they were real and then they all died like the dinosaurs, and now we only have birds." "That's a solid theory." "That's what I think." She skipped ahead, then ran back. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "Is this what it's going to be like now, you being home?" The question hit different than the other time she'd asked. Less anxious, more hopeful. "Yeah," Ethan said. "This is what it's going to be like." "Good. I like this better." That afternoon, they made cookies. Or tried to. Ethan had assumed cookie making was basically pancakes, but different shaped. He was wrong. The dough was too sticky, then too dry. Then he added too much flour trying to fix it, and the whole thing turned into a crumbly mess. "This isn't working," he said, staring at the disaster. "We need Rosa," Ava said matter-of-factly. "Rosa has the day off." "Then we need to watch a video. That's what Mommy used to do when she didn't know how to cook something." Sarah had done that. Ethan had forgotten. She'd pull up YouTube tutorials and follow along, talking back to the screen like the chef could hear her. They found a video, started over. This time the dough cooperated. They rolled it out, too thick at first, then too thin, finally just right, and cut shapes. Stars and trees and bells. Ava insisted on making one that looked like a rabbit. "For my rabbit," she explained, "so he has a cookie friend." They baked them in batches, filling the house with the smell of sugar and vanilla. While they waited for the last batch, Ava asked if they could call Grandma to confirm dinner plans. Ethan's mother answered on the second ring. "Ethan, I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about tonight." "We're still coming, Mom. 6 o'clock, right?" 6:30. "I told you 6:30. And bring wine. Your brother's bringing that girlfriend who doesn't eat carbs." Ava grabbed the phone. "Hi, Grandma. We made cookies. Well, Daddy made cookies, but they were bad, so we watched a video and made new ones, and these ones are good." Ethan heard his mother laugh. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. Save me one shaped like a star." After they hung up, the timer went off. The last batch was perfect. golden brown, crispy on the edges, soft in the middle. They let them cool while decorating the earlier ones with icing and sprinkles, Ava creating masterpieces that looked like a unicorn had exploded on each cookie. "These are for Santa," she announced, setting aside 3 of the least decorated ones. "He probably likes them plain." "Probably." "And these are for Grandma, and these are for Uncle David, and this one's for you." She handed him a star cookie covered in so much icing it was basically inedible. "Thanks, sweetheart." "You're welcome. You have to eat it right now so I can see if you like it." Ethan took a bite. It was overwhelmingly sweet, the icing grainy with undissolved sugar. "It's perfect," Ava beamed. They arrived at his mother's house in Brooklyn at 6:40, fashionably late, and carrying a tin of cookies that had somehow survived the subway ride intact. Ethan's mother lived in the same brownstone where he'd grown up, a 3-story walk-up that always smelled like whatever she'd been cooking for the last decade. Tonight, it was prime rib and rosemary. "You're late," she said, opening the door. "Traffic." "You took the subway." "Subway traffic." His mother, Margaret Cole, 68, retired school principal with the kind of no-nonsense attitude that had terrified 3 generations of middle schoolers, gave him a look that said she wasn't buying it but would let it slide. Then she saw Ava, and her face transformed. "There's my girl, come here." Ava ran into her grandmother's arms. Ethan followed them inside carrying the wine and cookies. The house was exactly as he remembered. Family photos covering every surface, furniture that had been old when Ethan was young, the kind of comfortable clutter that comes from actually living in a space instead of decorating it. His brother David was already there, sprawled on the couch with his girlfriend Jessica. David was 3 years younger, a corporate lawyer who'd followed a much more traditional path than Ethan. Married at 28, divorced at 31, now dating someone who looked like she'd walked out of a yoga catalog. "The prodigal son returns," David said, standing up to hug him. "Heard you quit your job." "I didn't quit. I restructured my role." "That's what they're calling it?" "That's what it is." Jessica extended a hand. "I'm Jessica. I've heard so much about you." She had the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Ethan had seen that smile in 1,000 boardrooms, the one that meant someone was evaluating you while pretending to be friendly. "Nice to meet you," he said. Dinner was chaos in the best way. Ava talked nonstop about cookies and libraries and ice skating. David told a story about a client who'd tried to sue his own mother. Jessica picked at her food and made pointed comments about carbs. Margaret presided over it all like a benevolent dictator, making sure everyone had enough food and cutting off arguments before they could start. For the first time in years, Ethan felt like part of a family instead of a visitor in his own life. After dinner, while the adults cleaned up, Ava convinced her grandmother to read one of the library books. They settled on the couch together, Ava tucked under Margaret's arm, both of them absorbed in a story about a dragon who was afraid of heights. David found Ethan in the kitchen loading the dishwasher. "So you really did it," David said. "Walked away from the throne." "I didn't walk away. I delegated." "Semantics. You're not CEO anymore. That's got to feel weird." "It feels weird," Ethan admitted, "but also right. Does that make sense?" "Not really. You spent 8 years building that company. Now you're just, what, hanging out, making pancakes?" "I'm being a father." "You were a father before." "No, before I was a wallet with legs." "There's a difference." David was quiet for a moment, scraping plates. "Jessica thinks I work too much. She says I'm married to my job." "Are you?" "Probably." David laughed, but it sounded hollow. "But that's what it takes, right? To be successful. You don't get to the top by working 40 hours a week." "Maybe, but what's the point of getting to the top if you're alone when you get there?" Says the guy who's worth $9 billion. $9 billion didn't bring Sarah back. It didn't make Ava less lonely. It just bought me a bigger house to be miserable in. David looked at him, really looked at him. "You okay, man?" "Yeah, I think so. For the first time in a while." They finished the dishes in silence. From the living room came the sound of Margaret reading, her voice taking on different tones for different characters. Ava's laughter punctuated the story. "She sounds happy," David said. "Yeah, she does." "That's because of you. You know that, right?" Ethan wasn't sure he did know that. He'd spent so long thinking of himself as the problem, the absent father, the workaholic, the guy who couldn't hold his life together after his wife died. Being the solution felt foreign. They rejoined the others for dessert, pie that Margaret had made from scratch because store-bought was an insult to pie everywhere. Ava ate her slice with ice cream and chocolate sauce, creating a mess that would have made Rosa cry. Around 9, Ava started falling asleep on the couch. Ethan picked her up. When had she gotten so heavy? And said their goodbyes. On the subway home, Ava dozed against his shoulder while other passengers smiled at them with that knowing look parents give each other. One woman, probably in her 50s, caught Ethan's eye. "Cherish it," she said. "They grow up so fast." He knew she meant it kindly, but the words hit hard. 3 years. He'd already lost 3 years. How many more moments had he missed that he could never get back? At home, he carried Ava upstairs and tucked her into bed without waking her. She stirred just enough to mumble something about cookies and dragons, then fell back into deep sleep. Ethan sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, watching her breathe. His phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. "Merry Christmas Eve. Everything's under control here. Stop checking your email." Ethan smiled. He hadn't checked his email in 6 hours. A new record. He texted back, "Merry Christmas. And I'm not checking. Much. Liar. Okay, maybe a little. Go spend time with your daughter. That's an order from your new CEO." Ethan put his phone away and went downstairs. The Christmas tree lights were still on, casting colored shadows across the living room. The cookies they'd made sat on the kitchen counter under plastic wrap. The house felt lived in a way it hadn't in years. Tomorrow was Christmas. The first Christmas where Ethan would be fully present instead of half there. One eye on his phone and the other on whatever couldn't wait. He made himself a cup of tea he didn't want and sat by the tree, thinking about the last few days. About Claire and Lily in an airport, about missing a flight and losing a deal, about choosing for once to be human instead of efficient. His phone rang. Unknown number again. Probably another reporter. He almost didn't answer, then something made him pick up. "Hello? Ethan Cole?" A woman's voice, vaguely familiar. "Speaking. This is Claire Bennett. We met at JFK last week. My daughter Lily, she was lost and you helped us." Ethan sat up straight. "Claire, hi." "Yes, I remember. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. This is going to sound strange, but I wanted to call and thank you. Properly. I didn't get a chance at the airport and it's been bothering me." "You don't have to thank me. I'm glad I could help." "You did more than help. She paused. "I saw the news. About you stepping down from your company, and I know it's probably none of my business, but I wanted you to know that what you said that night about going home to your daughter, that meant something. To me." Ethan didn't know what to say. Claire continued, "My mom died 3 days ago. We got to Phoenix and she was already in hospice, and we had maybe 6 hours with her before she was gone. 6 hours. And the whole time I kept thinking about what you said, about being present when it matters. Because that's all we get, you know? These little windows of time where the people we love are still here. I'm sorry about your mother." "Thank you. It was time. She was ready." Claire's voice caught. "But Lily got to say goodbye. She got to hold her grandmother's hand and tell her about the man at the airport who helped us find each other. And my mom smiled. Even through the pain, she smiled. I'm glad you got that time with her. Me too. And I'm glad you're getting time with your daughter. I read the interviews. You've taken a lot of heat for your decision." That was putting it mildly. The tech press had been brutal. "Billionaire has breakdown" was the kindest headline. Others had been worse. "I'm managing," Ethan said. "Well, for what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Lily talks about you all the time, about Mr. Ethan who helped us when we were lost. She says you're a good daddy because you went home to your little girl." Ethan felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. "That means more than you know. I should let you go. I just wanted to say thank you for helping us, for being kind when you didn't have to be, for reminding me that there are still good people in the world. Thank you for calling. And Claire, I'm sorry about your mom, really. Thank you. Merry Christmas, Ethan. Merry Christmas." After they hung up, Ethan sat in the silence of his living room, holding his phone and thinking about coincidence. About two strangers meeting in an airport and changing each other's trajectories in ways neither of them could have predicted. If he hadn't stopped to help Lily, would he still be CEO? Still chasing deals across the country while his daughter grew up with a nanny? Probably, and he would have missed this. This quiet Christmas Eve in a house that finally felt like home, with a daughter sleeping upstairs who actually believed her father would be there when she woke up. The next morning, Christmas Day, Ava woke him up at 6:30 by jumping on his bed. "It's Christmas! Santa came! There's presents everywhere!" Ethan stumbled downstairs to find their living room transformed. He'd stayed up until 2 in the morning assembling a dollhouse that had approximately 9 million pieces and arranging presents under the tree. Ava's squeal when she saw it all was worth every minute of lost sleep. They spent the morning opening gifts, Ava narrating every single one, even the socks, and eating cinnamon rolls Ethan had cheated and bought from the bakery. Around noon, Rosa stopped by with homemade tamales because Christmas isn't Christmas without proper food. In the afternoon, they watched Christmas movies and built elaborate scenarios with Ava's new dollhouse. Ethan had to voice all the boy dolls while Ava did the girls, creating a soap opera involving a lost cat, a birthday party, and a mysterious stranger who turned out to be the cat in disguise. "That doesn't make sense," Ethan said. "It's my story, Daddy. It doesn't have to make sense." Fair point. That evening, after Ava finally crashed from sugar and excitement, Ethan stood at her bedroom door, watching her sleep surrounded by new toys and books and the stuffed rabbit that had survived 6 years of childhood. His phone sat on the kitchen counter, ignored for an entire day. The company had survived without him. The world had kept turning, and he'd been fully, completely present for his daughter's Christmas. It felt like a small miracle. Later, sitting alone with a glass of wine he'd opened just to have something to do with his hands, Ethan thought about the year ahead, about what his life would look like now that he wasn't defined by Tech Vault, about whether he could actually sustain this new version of himself or if he'd slide back into old patterns. The uncertainty should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like possibility. His phone buzzed. One notification. An email from Jennifer Park, time-stamped an hour ago. Subject: Merry Christmas. Body: just wanted to say I had dinner with my daughter tonight. Really talked to her. First time in months. She's applying to art school. I didn't even know she liked art. Thank you for the reminder that some things matter more than quarterly reports. Enjoy your time with Ava. J. Ethan smiled and set down his phone. Outside, snow had started falling, the first real snow of the season, big fat flakes that caught the streetlights and turned the village into something out of a snow globe. He stood at the window watching it accumulate on parked cars and brownstone steps, thinking about how much had changed in less than 2 weeks. He'd gone from CEO of a $9 billion company to a father making pancakes and assembling dollhouses. On paper, it looked like failure. In reality, it felt like finally getting something right. Upstairs, Ava called out in her sleep. Something about cookies. Ethan smiled and headed up to check on her, leaving his empty wine glass on the counter and his phone face down on the table. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, questions he didn't have answers to, a future that looked nothing like the one he'd planned. But tonight, his daughter was home and safe and happy. And for the first time in 3 years, so was he. The weeks after Christmas blurred together in a way Ethan hadn't experienced since before Sarah died. Days had actual shape now, mornings with Ava before school, afternoons that weren't filled with conference calls, evenings that ended with bedtime stories instead of airport lounges. It should have been easier. Some days it was. Some days Ethan woke up and knew exactly what to do. Make breakfast, walk Ava to school, maybe hit the gym or read the book he'd been meaning to finish for 3 years. Those days felt like proof he'd made the right choice. Other days he woke up with his heart racing at 6 a.m., phantom urgent emails pulling him toward his laptop, the muscle memory of crisis management screaming that he was forgetting something critical. Those days he'd pace the house until Ava woke up, feeling like a fraud playing at being present. By mid-January, the novelty had worn off and reality had settled in. He was having one of the bad mornings when Ava found him sitting at the kitchen table staring at nothing. "You okay, Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetheart, just thinking." "About work?" "A little." Ava poured herself cereal. She'd gotten good at that in the last few weeks, and sat across from him. "Do you miss it?" The question caught him off guard. Miss what? Being the boss, going to meetings, all the stuff you used to do. Did he miss it? The honest answer was complicated. He missed feeling useful. He missed the adrenaline of closing a deal. He missed knowing exactly what he was supposed to be doing at every moment.
But he didn't miss the emptiness, the constant travel, the way work had filled every space in his life until there was no room left for anything real. Sometimes, Ethan admitted, but I like this better. Even when you look sad? I'm not sad, just adjusting. Ava ate her cereal thoughtfully. Rosa says change is hard even when it's good change. Is that true? Yeah, that's very true. She also says you need to find a hobby. What's a hobby?
Something you do just because you enjoy it, not for work. Oh, like how I like drawing. Exactly like that. What's your hobby, Daddy? Ethan opened his mouth and realized he had no answer. What did he do for enjoyment? What had he ever done that wasn't in service of building something or achieving something or proving something? I don't know, he said finally. You should get one. Then you won't look sad in the mornings. Out of the mouths of children. Again. That afternoon, after dropping Ava at school, Ethan found himself wandering through the village with no particular destination. He passed a bookstore and went inside, browsing without purpose. The business section felt like returning to a crime scene. He moved to fiction instead. A clerk noticed him looking lost. Can I help you find something? I don't know what I'm looking for. That's the best way to find it, she said, which was either profound or meaningless. He left with 3 novels he'd never heard of, chosen purely because the covers looked interesting. At home, he tried to read, made it through 15 pages before his mind wandered to TechVault's Q1 projections. He forced himself to keep reading. By page 50, he was actually absorbed in the story. By page 100, he'd forgotten to check his phone for 2 hours. Small victories. The following week, Ava's ballet showcase arrived. Ethan had it marked on his calendar in red, circled 3 times, with a reminder alert starting 2 days before. He wasn't missing this. He arrived at the dance studio 30 minutes early and claimed a seat in the front row. Other parents filtered in, most of them mothers who gave him curious looks. The only father here. The one who'd apparently never attended before because several moms kept glancing at him like he was a zoo animal that had escaped its enclosure. Rosa arrived 10 minutes before showtime, looking surprised to see him. Mr. Cole, you came. Of course I came. It's just, in the 3 years I've worked for you, you've never... She stopped herself. I'm glad you're here. Ava will be so happy. The lights dimmed, music started. Little girls in pink tutus filed onto the small stage, faces serious with concentration. Ava was third from the left, her hair pulled back so tight it made her eyes look bigger. She scanned the audience, found Ethan, and her face lit up with such pure joy that he felt something crack open in his chest. The performance was chaos. Half the girls forgot their steps. One started crying and had to be led off stage. Another waved at her parents through the entire routine. Ava was perfect. Not technically, her pirouette was wobbly and she was half a beat behind the music, but she danced like nobody was watching, like the only thing that mattered was the movement itself. Ethan couldn't stop smiling. Afterward, Ava ran to him still in her costume. Did you see me? Did you see my jumps? I saw everything. You were amazing. Really? Really. She hugged him tight, smelling like hairspray and sweat and childhood. Other parents were taking their daughters out for ice cream or pizza, celebrating. Ethan made a split-second decision. You want to get dinner? Just us? Anywhere you want. Anywhere? Anywhere. Ava thought very seriously. Can we go to the fancy place? The one with the white tablecloths? She meant Per Se, the 3 Michelin star restaurant where Ethan had taken clients and investors, but never his daughter. It was probably booked months in advance and definitely not set up for 6-year-olds. Let me make a call, Ethan said. 20 minutes later, they were seated at a corner table at Jean-Georges, slightly less formal than Per Se, but still way too fancy for a kid in a tutu. Ava insisted on keeping the costume on. The maitre d' didn't blink. This is so fancy, Ava whispered, eyes huge as she looked at the menu. You deserve fancy. You were the best dancer up there. Really? Because Emma did her pirouette without falling, and I kind of wobbled. You had more passion. That matters more than perfect technique. What's passion? Caring about something so much you can't help but put everything into it. Ava considered this while examining the menu upside down. I can't read this. It's in French. Ethan translated, keeping it simple. Ava ordered chicken, but the fancy kind, and asked if she could try his wine. Absolutely not. Just a sip? Not even a drop. Fine. Can I have fancy juice? They ordered sparkling cider that came in a wine glass, making Ava feel extremely sophisticated. She sat up straighter, trying to act grown up, which lasted approximately 3 minutes before she was her normal 6-year-old self again, narrating everything about her day. And then Emma said her costume was prettier than mine, but I said they're all the same, and she said, yeah, but hers fit better. And I said that's because her mom knows how to sew and my daddy doesn't, and then she felt bad. Did I make her sad, Daddy? Probably a little, but you were just being honest. Is it okay to be honest, even if it makes people sad? Ethan thought about that. About all the times in business he'd delivered hard truths that people didn't want to hear. About the difference between honesty and cruelty. It depends, he said carefully. Sometimes people need to hear the truth even if it's hard, but sometimes being kind is more important than being right. That's confusing. Yeah, it really is. Their food arrived. Ava attacked her chicken with the enthusiasm of someone who just burned 1,000 calories dancing. Between bites, she told him about school and her friends and the boy who ate paste and the teacher who wore funny sweaters. Ethan realized he'd never asked about any of this before. He'd known Ava went to school, obviously, but the details of her day had always been Rosa's domain. Now he was learning that Mrs. Henderson wore a different holiday sweater every day in December. That recess was the best part of school except when it rained, and that Ava had a crush on a boy named Oliver who had red hair and shared his crackers. Do you think Oliver likes me? Ava asked. I think Oliver would be an idiot not to like you. Daddy, you said idiot. Sorry, I think Oliver would be very silly not to like you. Ava giggled. You're not supposed to say that word. I know, don't tell Rosa. I won't. It's our secret. They finished dinner and walked home through the cold January night, Ava still in her tutu under her winter coat, chattering about everything and nothing. Ethan held her hand and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Content. Not happy in some explosive way, not the high of closing a major deal, just quietly, steadily content with exactly where he was. The next morning, Marcus called. We need to talk, he said without preamble. That sounds ominous. It's not bad, but we need to discuss your role going forward. Can you come in? Ethan looked at his calendar. Blank, completely blank. When? Today? Around 2? I'll be there. At 1:30, Ethan took the subway to Midtown, feeling strange in a suit after weeks of jeans and sweaters. The Tech Vault building looked the same, glass and steel, and the kind of modern architecture that was supposed to inspire innovation. He rode the elevator to the executive floor. Vanessa did a double take when she saw him. Mr. Cole, Ethan, sorry, still getting used to the new normal. How's Marcus doing? Honestly, better than expected. The team loves him. He's already implemented 3 changes you would have shot down. Good changes? Great changes. Turns out micromanaging everything wasn't actually the secret to success. Ethan laughed. Yeah, I'm learning that. Marcus was in what used to be Ethan's office, surrounded by papers, and looking slightly frazzled, but energized. He stood when Ethan entered. Thanks for coming. I know you're technically on sabbatical. I'm not on sabbatical. I'm available for strategic consultation. That was the deal. Right. Well, I need strategic consultation. Marcus gestured to the papers. We've been approached by 3 different companies interested in acquisition. Ethan's instinct was immediate. No, Tech Vault wasn't for sale. He'd built it from nothing. It was his legacy. But it wasn't just his anymore. He'd stepped back. Marcus was CEO now. What do you think? Ethan asked instead. Marcus looked surprised by the question. Honestly, 2 of them I'd reject immediately. But Harrison Tech's offer is interesting. They're proposing a merger, not an acquisition. We'd maintain operational independence but gain access to their distribution network. It could triple our market reach. Harrison Tech tried to poach our engineers last year. I know, but this feels different. Real synergy, not just consolidation. Ethan sat down, processing. 6 months ago, he would have made this decision alone. Now he was being asked for advice, not permission. What does the board think? Split. David Wright hates it. Jennifer Park thinks it's worth exploring. Everyone else is waiting to see what you say. What I say shouldn't matter. You're CEO. But you're still the founder. Your opinion carries weight whether you want it to or not. Fair point. Ethan looked out the window at Manhattan sprawling below. From up here, the city looked orderly, clean, like everything made sense. My gut says be careful, Ethan said slowly. Harrison Tech has a history of promising autonomy and then slowly absorbing companies into their corporate structure. But my gut also said to work 80-hour weeks and miss my daughter's childhood, so maybe don't trust it too much. Marcus smiled. That's helpful, I think. Talk to their CEO directly, not the business development people. If you can't articulate why this merger matters beyond the financials, walk away. Good partnerships are about shared vision, not just shared profit. That's actually really good advice. I had my moments. They talked for another hour about the company, not because Marcus needed Ethan's approval, but because it felt good to be consulted, to still have value without being essential. Afterward, Ethan didn't go straight home. He walked. Just walked through Midtown, past the lunch crowds, and the tourists and the street vendors selling scarves and fake Rolexes. He ended up at Grand Central, watching people rush to catch trains. Everyone moving with purpose, heading somewhere important. A year ago, he'd been one of them, always in motion, always chasing the next thing. Now he had nowhere to be until 3:15 when school let out. It should have felt empty. Instead, it felt like breathing room. His phone rang. Claire Bennett. They'd been talking every few weeks since Christmas. Strange phone calls where they compared notes on single parenting and grief, and the weird guilt that came from choosing yourself over obligation. She'd become something like a friend, though they'd only met once. Hey, Ethan answered. Hey, bad time? No, I'm just watching people be busy. How are you? Good. Weird. I started therapy. Yeah. How's that going? Terrible. My therapist says I use humor as a defense mechanism, and I need to sit with uncomfortable feelings. So naturally I made a joke about sitting, and she didn't laugh. Ethan smiled. Sounds productive. Oh, it's a nightmare, but apparently healthy? I don't know. How are you? I'm standing in Grand Central watching strangers and feeling philosophical. That tracks. Lily asks about you sometimes. Wants to know if you're still with your little girl. Tell her yes. Very much yes. She'll be happy to hear that. She's decided you're her imaginary friend's dad. I'm honored. You should be. Her imaginary friend is a dragon named Sparkles, who solves crimes. You're in good company. They talked for 20 minutes about nothing important. Claire's job search, Ava's ballet recital, Lily's new obsession with detective shows. Easy conversation that didn't require performance or strategy. Before hanging up, Claire said, You know what's weird? We met one time, for maybe an hour, and somehow you changed my entire perspective on what mattered. That's kind of crazy. You did the same for me. I guess sometimes people show up exactly when we need them. After they hung up, Ethan thought about that, about randomness and timing, and the little moments that shifted everything. If he'd walked past Lily instead of stopping, if he'd ignored Claire's invitation to sit in the lounge, if he'd gotten on that plane to Seattle, how different would his life look? He'd probably still be CEO, still chasing deals, still convinced that success was measured in dollars and market share instead of bedtime stories and ballet recitals. Still empty. Ethan picked up Ava from school, and they walked home slowly, her backpack bouncing with each step. How was your day? She asked. Good. I had a meeting with Marcus. Is he doing a good job being the boss? A great job. Better than I expected. That's good. Rosa says you needed to let other people be in charge. Rosa says a lot of things. She's usually right, though. Yeah, she usually is. That night, after dinner and homework and the nightly battle over screen time, Ethan read Ava 3 books instead of 2 because she'd used her negotiation skills, and he was secretly impressed. Daddy? She said as he turned off the light. Yeah? I'm glad you're home more. Me too. But sometimes you still look sad. Are you sad? Ethan sat back down on the edge of her bed. Not sad exactly, just figuring things out. Like what? Like who I am when I'm not working all the time. Like what I want my life to look like. Grown-up stuff. Ava thought about this. Mommy used to say that being happy isn't something that happens to you. You have to choose it every day. The words hit Ethan hard. Sarah had said that. He'd forgotten. She was right, he said quietly. So are you choosing to be happy? I'm trying. Good. Because I like it when you smile. You look more like my daddy when you smile. After tucking her in, Ethan went downstairs and pulled out the box of Sarah's things he'd packed away 3 years ago. Photos. Letters. The journals she'd kept during her treatment. He'd been too afraid to look at any of it, afraid it would hurt too much, afraid he'd fall apart. Now he opened the journal to a random page. March 14th. Ethan's at another conference, Tokyo this time. I understand why he works so much. He thinks he's building security for our future. But I wish he understood that I don't need security. I need him. I need him to be here, present, not constantly halfway to the next airport. I'm dying, and he's running. I know he's scared. I'm scared too. But running doesn't change what's coming. It just means we lose the time we still have. Ethan read the entry 3 times, tears streaming down his face. She'd known. She'd watched him choose work over being present, and she'd known exactly what he was doing. He kept reading. April 3rd. Bad day today. The pain is getting worse. Ethan called from San Francisco, apologizing for missing my appointment. I told him it was fine. It's not fine. I'm so tired of pretending it's fine. I want to be angry with him, but I'm too tired. I just want him here. Page after page of the same theme. Sarah asking for presents. Ethan providing everything except what she actually needed. And now he was doing the same thing to Ava. No. Had been doing the same thing, past tense. He was here now, making different choices, breaking the pattern. But the damage of those 3 years couldn't be erased with a few weeks of bedtime stories and ballet recitals. Ava had learned not to expect him. Claire's words echoed. She's already lost one parent. She can't lose you too, even if you're still breathing. The question was whether he could prove to his daughter that this version of him, present, engaged, choosing her over everything else, was permanent. Not a phase, not something that would evaporate when the novelty wore off. Ethan closed the journal and pulled out his phone. He opened a new note and started writing. Things I want Ava to know. 1. Your mother loved you more than anything in this world. She fought to stay alive as long as she could because she wanted more time with you. 2. I failed her. I ran instead of being present. I chose work because it was easier than facing what was happening. 3. I'm not running anymore. 4. You deserve a father who shows up, who keeps promises, who chooses you over everything else. 5. I'm going to mess this up sometimes. I'm going to have bad days, but I'm trying, and I'll keep trying. 6. You are enough. You've always been enough. I'm the one who wasn't. He saved the note and set down his phone. Tomorrow he'd probably wake up anxious again, missing the structure of his old life, fighting the urge to check his email compulsively. But he'd also wake up in a house with his daughter. He'd make breakfast, walk her to school, be present for whatever the day brought. Small choices, repeated daily, adding up to a different life. The weeks turned into months. Ethan found his rhythm. Mornings with Ava, midday strategy calls with Marcus, afternoons that varied between gym sessions and long walks, and finally finishing those novels. He joined a book club mostly filled with retirees who didn't care about his tech credentials. He started cooking actual meals, badly at first, then marginally better. He learned that the trick to pancakes was medium heat and patience, 2 things he'd never been good at. He learned a lot of things. By March, Ava's 7th birthday, Ethan had been functionally retired for 3 months. The press had moved on to newer scandals. TechVault's stock had stabilized. Marcus was thriving as CEO, making decisions Ethan wouldn't have made, but that were somehow working. Ava wanted a small party, just her closest friends. No elaborate planning. They did it at the house with a cake Ethan made himself, lopsided and overfrosted but made with actual effort. Watching Ava blow out her candles, surrounded by kids screaming and laughing and high on sugar, Ethan caught Rosa's eye. She smiled at him, that knowing smile that said she'd seen this transformation and approved. After the party, after the kids had been picked up and the living room looked like a tornado had hit it, Ava collapsed on the couch next to him. "Best birthday ever," she declared. "Yeah? Yeah, because you were here the whole time. You didn't have to take any calls or leave early or anything." Such a low bar, and yet he'd failed to clear it for 3 years. "I'm glad I was here," Ethan said. "Me too." That night, tucking her in, Ava asked, "Daddy, do you think Mommy would be proud of you now?" The question he'd been avoiding for months. "I don't know," Ethan said honestly. "I hope so. I think she would. Because you're not sad all the time anymore. I'm still sad sometimes. That's okay. Rosa says being sad is part of being human, but you're not empty sad anymore. You're just regular sad sometimes." Empty sad. The perfect description for the last 3 years. "You're very wise," Ethan said. "I know. It's because I'm 7 now. 7-year-olds know everything." He kissed her forehead. "Good night, sweetheart." "Night, Daddy. Love you." "Love you too." In the hallway, Ethan stood for a moment, listening to Ava settle into sleep. 7 years old. In 11 more years, she'd be leaving for college. Time was already moving too fast. But he was here now, present, showing up. That had to count for something. His phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer Park. "Saw the photo of Ava's birthday party on your Instagram. She looks happy. So do you." Ethan had forgotten he'd even posted it. He rarely used social media. He'd hired people to manage his public image for years. But this afternoon, he'd posted a picture of Ava's lopsided cake with the caption, "Amateur baker, professional dad." The comments were the usual mix. Some supportive, some critical. One guy had written, "Must be nice to retire at 32 while the rest of us work," with several angry emojis. Ethan had almost responded, then remembered he didn't owe anyone an explanation for his choices. He texted Jennifer back. "We are happy. How's your daughter? Applied to art school, 3 different programs. I'm learning about conceptual art and trying not to have opinions about her boyfriend who has face tattoos." That sounds terrifying. It is. But she's talking to me again. So I'll take it. Small victories all around. Over the next few weeks, Ethan started thinking about what came next. Being a present father was non-negotiable. But he had time and resources, and the vague sense that he should be doing something beyond making pancakes and reading novels. He started volunteering at Ava's school, helping with the after-school coding club. Turns out teaching 8-year-olds basic programming was harder than running a billion-dollar company. They asked questions he couldn't answer and cared 0% about his credentials. It was humbling and kind of great. He also started working with a foundation that helped military families. Claire had mentioned the resources she'd needed after John died, and Ethan realized he could actually help with that. Not just write a check, though he did that too. Actually show up. Mentor widows trying to navigate single parenthood, fund childcare programs and therapy access. Make something meaningful out of his stupid amounts of money. By May, 6 months after stepping down, Ethan had built a life that looked nothing like his old one. Slower, smaller in scope, focused on things that couldn't be quantified in quarterly reports. And he didn't miss it. The old life, the constant motion, the emptiness disguised as achievement. On a Tuesday afternoon in late May, Ethan picked Ava up from school and found her unusually quiet. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing." "Ava," she sighed. "Emma's dad is taking her to Disney World, and Oliver's dad coaches a soccer team, and Maya's dad built her a treehouse. And? And I just wondered if you ever wish you still had your important job instead of hanging out with me all the time." The question gutted him. "Come here," Ethan said, kneeling down to her level. "Look at me. Really look at me." Ava met his eyes, worried. "That job was important," Ethan said. "I built something real. But you know what I was doing while I was being so important? I was missing you. I was missing your whole life. Your recitals and your birthdays and the way you narrate everything when you're drawing. I was so busy being important that I forgot about the most important thing." "What's that?" "You. Being your dad. Not just paying for things or showing up sometimes. Actually being here. Present. Every single day." "Really? Really?" I would give up 100 companies if it meant having breakfast with you every morning. Because here's the secret nobody tells you. Success doesn't mean anything if you're alone at the end of the day. And I was alone for 3 years because I chose to be, because I was scared and sad and I didn't know how to deal with losing your mom. But I'm not running anymore. Ava hugged him tight. I'm glad you're not running. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. That night, after Ava was asleep, Ethan sat down and wrote an email to Marcus. I'm ready to officially resign from the board. You don't need me anymore. The company doesn't need me. And I need to stop pretending I'm still part of something I've already left. Make it effective next month. Give my board seat to Jennifer. She'll actually use it to make things better. He sent it before he could second-guess himself. Marcus called 10 minutes later. You sure about this? I'm sure. The board's going to lose their minds. David especially. Let them. This is the right move. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Again. Thanks, Marcus. For everything. For not making this weird. For being better at this than I was. That's not true. It is. And that's okay. You were ready. I was just too stubborn to see it. After hanging up, Ethan felt lighter. Like he'd been carrying something heavy for months and finally put it down. The next morning, he told Ava at breakfast, I officially quit my job today. She looked up from her cereal. I thought you already quit. I sort of half quit. Now I fully quit. What are you going to do instead? I'm going to be your dad, full time, and maybe help other people who need it, and definitely get better at making pancakes. Your pancakes are still pretty bad, Daddy. I know, but I'm trying. That's what matters, right? Trying? Yeah, that's exactly what matters. On a Saturday in June, almost 7 months after that night in JFK, Ethan's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. He almost didn't answer, then recognized the area code. Phoenix. Hello? Ethan, it's Claire. I'm in New York. Long story, job interview, very unexpected. But Lily and I are here for the weekend, and she's been begging to see if we could say hi. I know it's last minute and probably weird. Where are you staying? Midtown, near Times Square. Come to the Village. I'll text you the address. Ava would love to meet Lily, and I'd love to see you both. Really? Really? 2 hours later, Claire and Lily showed up at his door. Lily was bigger than Ethan remembered, her red coat replaced by a purple jacket, but her energy was exactly the same. Mr. Ethan! She threw her arms around him. Mommy said we could visit. Is your little girl here? She's inside. Her name's Ava. She's very excited to meet you. Ava had been vibrating with anticipation all morning. The two girls stared at each other for approximately 3 seconds before Lily said, Do you like dragons? And Ava said, I love dragons. And they ran off to Ava's room to play, best friends instantaneously. Claire and Ethan stood in the hallway, laughing. Kids are wild, Claire said. They really are. Coffee? They sat in the kitchen while the girls created what sounded like an elaborate dragon adventure upstairs. Claire looked good, less exhausted than at the airport, more settled. How's the job situation? Ethan asked. Potentially good? It's with a nonprofit doing veteran family services. The interview went well, and honestly, I need a fresh start. Phoenix has too many memories. I get that. I heard you left Tech Vault completely. News travels fast. It was in the Wall Street Journal. Right. Yeah, I officially resigned last month. Board seat and everything. How does it feel? Terrifying, liberating, both at the same time. Ethan paused. You know that night at the airport, when Lily asked if I was lost? I remember. I was lost, completely lost. I'd been lost for 3 years and pretending I knew exactly where I was going. Your daughter saw right through it. Claire smiled. She has a gift for that. Calling out bullshit. I'm glad she did. I'm glad you both... Ethan stopped, trying to find the right words. You changed my life. That probably sounds dramatic, but it's true. 1 hour in an airport with 2 strangers and everything shifted. You changed ours too. After Mom died, I was drowning, but I kept thinking about what you said about being present when it matters, about choosing the people you love over everything else. It helped. I'm glad. They talked for hours while the girls played, about grief and change and the weird path life takes when you stop trying to control every outcome. Claire told him about her mother's final days, how Lily had held her grandmother's hand and sung her favorite song. Ethan told her about reading Sarah's journal, finally facing what he'd been running from. Eventually, the girls came downstairs covered in marker and glitter. "We made dragons," Lily announced, "and they're best friends forever." "Just like us," Ava added. Claire checked her watch. "We should probably head back. We have dinner plans." "Can we come back tomorrow?" Lily asked. "Please, please, please." Claire looked at Ethan. "Would that be okay?" "More than okay. Come over for lunch. I'll make pancakes." "Daddy's pancakes are bad," Ava warned, "but in a good way." The next day, they did it again. Pancakes that were slightly less terrible than usual, followed by a trip to the park, where the girls ran themselves ragged, while Claire and Ethan sat on a bench talking about everything and nothing. "If I get this job," Claire said carefully, "we'd be moving here, to New York. That would be good. For you and for Lily, I mean. And for you?" Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, saw the question she wasn't quite asking. "Yeah," he said, "for me too." Claire smiled, and something shifted in the air between them. Not dramatic, not a movie moment, just a quiet acknowledgement that maybe this, whatever this was, could become something. They had time to figure it out. 2 weeks later, Claire called with news. She got the job. They'd be moving to New York at the end of summer. Ava was thrilled. "Lily's going to live here? Forever?" "Well, until college, probably. That's basically forever." By August, Claire and Lily had moved into an apartment in Brooklyn. The girls started second grade together. Claire started her new job. Ethan and Claire started dating, carefully and slowly, both of them scarred enough to take their time. Some days were easy, some days were complicated. But they showed up for each other, messy and imperfect and trying. On a Saturday in September, almost a year after that night at JFK, Ethan took Ava to her ballet class. While waiting for her to finish, he scrolled through news on his phone and saw a headline. TechVault Solutions announces merger with Harrison Tech in record-breaking deal. Marcus had done it, closed the merger Ethan had been skeptical about. He texted congratulations. Marcus called instead of texting back. "Did you see?" "Just did. Congrats. That's huge. Couldn't have done it without your advice. The stuff you said about shared vision, that's what sealed it. Their CEO actually cared about the mission, not just the money. I'm glad it worked out. Would you want to grab lunch sometime, just to catch up?" "Yeah, I'd like that." They made plans for the following week. After hanging up, Ethan realized he didn't feel jealous or left out. Just happy for Marcus. Happy the company was thriving. Happy he'd contributed something without needing to control everything. Ava emerged from class, tutu askew, face flushed with exertion. "Did you see my new jump?" "I saw it. Very impressive." "Mrs. Henderson says I'm getting really good. She thinks I should try advanced class." "Do you want to do advanced class?" "I don't know. It's more days per week. Would you still come watch?" "Every single time." "Then yeah, I want to try." They walked home through the village, Ava chattering about ballet and school and the book she was reading about a girl who discovered she was secretly a princess. Normal 7-year-old stuff, the kind of stuff Ethan had missed for 3 years. He'd never get those years back. That was the hard truth. The damage couldn't be fully undone. But he was here now, showing up, choosing presence over prestige, and slowly, carefully, learning that the most important things in life couldn't be measured in dollars or market share or magazine covers. They were measured in moments, small, ordinary moments that added up to a life worth living. Pancakes on Saturday mornings, ballet recitals, bedtime stories, the weight of a small hand in yours, the sound of your daughter's laugh, the choice, made daily, to be present instead of running. That night, after dinner with Claire and Lily, a regular occurrence now, Ethan tucked Ava into bed. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "I'm really glad that little girl got lost at the airport." Ethan smiled. "Me too, sweetheart. Because now you're here, and Lily's my best friend, and we're happy. We are happy. And that's what matters, right? Being happy and together? That's exactly what matters," Ava yawned. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too." He turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her settle into sleep. Down the hall, his phone was probably buzzing with emails and notifications he'd check eventually. But not now. Now he was going to go downstairs and have a glass of wine with Claire while the girls slept peacefully upstairs. They'd talk about their days and make plans for the weekend and maybe, if they felt brave, talk about what the future might look like. No rushing, no pressure, just two people figuring it out together. Ethan closed Ava's door gently and headed downstairs, leaving behind the person he used to be, the billionaire CEO, who measured worth in achievements and thought success meant never slowing down. That version of him had been lost, but he'd found something better. He'd found his way home.